Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Let's Talk Automotive, episode 12.
A dozen.
Welcome, Peter Viljoen. Welcome to our viewers on raceday.tv, FS Media, and FS Auto. In tonight's show, we've got the latest news. We've got a very special guest, Brendon Carpenter from Suzuki South Africa, joining us. We've got a Guess the Car game, which you suck, by the way.
Yeah.
And we've got our new segment, How Things Work. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Let's Talk Automotive. Right, so let's jump right into it, Pete. The news.
The news to use or lose.
This week we've got some bad news.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Price increase on the petrol. So why don't you jump in and let's go through it quickly.
All right, so the price increase, we've seen a massive price increase this month. So what we're going to look at with the price increase is A, whether it's justified, B, what the breakdown of the fuel price is, and I think, interestingly enough, let's have a look at where we rank in the world in terms of fuel prices. Fritz, if we can just get our first slide up. All right, so as we can see, I've just put a chart there in terms of the 95 unleaded inland fuel price, and you can see there's been a massive jump since we started the lockdown. At the bottom, I've got a little table there that looks at the difference in price between coastal and inland. My one concern in terms of the justification of the fuel price increase is if we have a look at the difference between 95 unleaded and 93 unleaded, at the coast there's only a 10-cent difference, but inland there's a 29-cent difference. So something that doesn't make sense over there. If we go to the next slide, I'm just going to have a look at what is the actual over-recovery in fuel price versus the exchange rate versus the Brent crude price. So if we have a look at the depreciation of the rand versus the dollar from January to June, we can see it's 16.66%. And then the drop in the Brent crude price from January to July is 26.9%. But the actual drop in fuel price over that same period is only around about 6%. So I think there's been a massive over-recovery in that price there, which just doesn't make sense. So let's go down to the breakdown of the fuel price in South Africa, and this is going to shock a few people. So the basic fuel price, as per the 1st of July, is R5.64, Fani. Can you believe it?
That's
Imagine.
Insane.
All right, but it's made up of a whole lot of different things. So if we have a look at some of the taxes, we've got a general fuel levy at R3.77. The road accident fund at R2.07. Interestingly, customs and excise at 4 cents. And then a whole lot of other issues that are added to the fuel price. And eventually we end up with the current fuel price, which is R15.12. Now that R15.12, by the way, look at what goes to government. 45.3% goes straight to the government coffers. And the projected revenue just on the general fuel levy and the road accident fund is 134 billion rand, which represents around about 10% of our total tax revenue, Fani. So a heck of a lot of money. We kind of wonder where all that money is going and why we still have toll roads, for example.
Absolutely.
You know, that should really be paying for the roads. I think the last thing to look at is where do we lie in terms of fuel prices compared to the rest of the world, and we're actually in very good shape here.
It's actually I couldn't believe this.
It's astounding. The only one that I worry about is why fuel is still cheap in Botswana, given that we supply Botswana fuel. But nonetheless, look at New Zealand, 22 rand. The United Kingdom, also massive.
23 and 43 cents. And then the last shocker on that list is Zimbabwe at almost 50 rand a litre.
50 rand a litre, and given the inflation rate sitting at 700%, we can expect that's going to go skywards as well. So I really do feel sorry for them. So ultimately, while we are a little bit confused as to the breakdown of the fuel price and where all that money goes, I still think we're in good shape.
that was a shocker. First of all, I didn't realize that fuel was so much more expensive in countries like New Zealand and United Kingdom. And I feel sorry for the guys in Zim. But listen, let's move on to our next segment, because I'm very excited to talk to this guy. His name is Brendon Carpenter. He's from Suzuki South Africa. He's the brand and marketing manager at Suzuki Auto South Africa. He's been with them for 7 years, believe it or not. He started out as the media fleet scheduler, sales and product training, sales and training development, head of product planning, and now is the brand marketing manager. Brendon, welcome to Let's Talk Automotive. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Fani. Hi, Peter. And hi to the audience as well. Thank you for having me, and thanks for the invitations.
Great pleasure, Brendon. Welcome. Welcome to the show.
A guy with a long CV like that, I'm very honored to have you on the show, man.
Absolutely.
I've done the rounds, even though it's just with one company. So, yeah, thank you.
Listen, Brendon, let's get straight into some questions for you. Suzuki in South Africa, over the last 4 to 5 years, has been a bit of a fairy tale story, from the outside looking in. Tell us about your journey, man. You guys only came into the country in 2008, is that correct?
Yeah, and obviously with this being your 12th episode, this is our 12th year of Suzuki Auto South Africa. And like you said rightly, in the past, let's say 4 to 5 years, we've seen exceptional growth. But that's all thanks to the work that has been done since our introduction in 2008. My journey starts really relatively early. In 2008 as a customer, studied marketing and worked my way up in Suzuki Auto South Africa. And I think if we look at the last few years' performance, we're the fastest growing brand in South Africa, car supplier brand in South Africa over the last 3 years. Yesterday, we've seen in the NAAMSA stats that we are sitting 4th overall in passenger car sales. So a really good achievement on that front. And we've managed to double our sales figures in the last 3 years. Part of that is obviously our commitment to the customer and being really honored to be nominated and actually winning Brand of the Year twice, and being one of the top 3, being in the top 3 over the last few years for the running of that competition as well. So just a sentiment of the customers really enjoying our brand.
And also something in the last, must have been in the last 6 months, or the fuel economy run that you guys did so well in as well with the vehicles that entered that, hey?
Yes, definitely. Cost of ownership is very important to customers looking at buying a vehicle, and that's why we participated in it, and we are happy with our performance that we've achieved at the fuel economy run as well.
Awesome. So, Brendon, what was the strategy behind this explosive growth, if I can call it that? What was the strategy? What did you guys do in the last couple of years that saw this rise in sales and car park?
As you know, Fani, in the automotive industry, it could be quite easy to try and spike your numbers for one particular month, and that was never part of our strategy. It was consistency month after month to see how we can organically grow the Suzuki brand in South Africa through the dealer network. And I put on the slide there a young, dynamic team. So young meaning that we are a young, fresh brand. We're a fresh alternative to let's say the more popular brands out there, and I think that puts us in a good position. We're dynamic in the fact that we're a small team, and we try and move with the times and be adaptable at any given date and time. And then also the team is the hard work that our dealers have put through. And with that is obviously we expanded our dealer network, but not only try and open up a lot of dealers, but make sure that their throughput is great. And I mean, the support we've had from our dealer network is just phenomenal. Obviously couple that with strong marketing presence and a strategy, and also great product within important segments in South Africa, where that leads us to the next slide, where we look at the product lineup and the way that it has grown over the past few years.
Yes.
I'm really struck a chord with the South African audience to provide value for money in each and every segment in comparison to the other manufacturers that are out there. And I think it's all of these elements combined that really attributed to the success of the Suzuki brand.
Fani, if I can just add there, and Brendon, we deal with a lot of the OEMs in this country, and I've got to tell you that consistently over the years, the management at head office in Suzuki is nothing short of impressive.
Yes.
Really, really a proper team of young guns that are hungry, pleasant to deal with, really talented individuals. And in fact, some of them have now ended up overseas as well.
Yes.
So, I think kudos to you guys there. They always say the fish rots from the head. And I can tell you that, with the sales success that you guys are seeing, it is to do with the product, but I can also honestly tell you from my own experiences that it's to do with the management team that exists within Suzuki. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, Peter.
Before we carry on, I just want to take some time and mention our viewers, because we've got Hester van der Merwe, Liesel Asman, we've got Kobus or Koos Kutsia, Jaco Skeepers, Donnie Botha, Dippies Dippinal. We've got a lot of guys. Guys, please stay tuned, because there's a lot of interesting and exciting things going to happen. We're gonna play a little bit of a guessing game just now. Guess the car, Peter versus Brendon. So and you guys at home can also join that. But let's move on to a couple of other questions, Pete. I think you had a question with regards to their stock situation.
Yes, so we've seen, and obviously the research that we do on the industry, that between February, then the lockdown, and now when we've opened up, we've had a look at some of the manufacturers and who's experienced the biggest losses. Suzuki seems to be well positioned in terms of, the losses that you've experienced can probably be accountable to the lockdown itself. But have you guys got additional stock that you perhaps have up your sleeve, or what's been your secret in terms of maintaining relatively strong sales through this period?
Well, obviously, no one could predict that something like COVID-19 would really affect would have obviously been like a global phenomenon that has affected the entire industry the way that it has. And I think a blessing in disguise is that obviously we project for growth in South Africa, so we try and make sure that our stock levels are appropriate. I also think in terms of the stock levels, if you look at input and output, yes, the input in terms of the manufacturing has definitely seen a decline in production. And I mean, our biggest manufacturing country, India, has been on lockdown for 2 months in terms of that, and that relatively has affected us. However, I think also the loss of sales during April has also offset that deficit a little bit. And I think we're in a good position. We did feel obviously some of the pressure, and there are particular models that have seen a little bit more, let's say, effect from that. And it's not something that's a big concern, but it's something that we closely monitor with our teams overseas to try and see what we can do and help alleviate the situation.
Awesome.
So I think to tie up with the stock situation, I wanna jump ahead quickly, and I want to put Brendon on a little bit of a spot. So let's talk about the Jimny. You listen, the Jimny was a huge success. Did the Jimny actually catch you guys offside? Guys were on a waiting list for a year. Really? What's the story with that?
Yes, obviously, and it's not just South Africa. It's obviously a global phenomenon, and it was 20 years in the making for the new Jimny to be launched. So highly anticipated model, and I think it caught everyone a little bit off guard globally and let's say locally per se. I must say we were very fortunate in South Africa to receive the Jimny as early as we did. We were the first country out of Asia to actually debut it in South Africa and to launch it. And I can guarantee you that with some other, let's say, meetings and discussions we've had with other countries, they were quite jealous of the amount that we managed to secure given our market size.
Yes.
At the moment, it has seemed to alleviate that pressure a little bit more. Obviously, COVID has affected those stock levels again a little bit, so we're still back on a bit of a waiting list. But I think customers have now realized that, okay, it is a model that's in demand, and I've yet to see a customer that said, okay, I waited 12 months for it, and it's a total disappointment. All of them are 100% so happy with their Jimny purchase, and it's now a very special car to drive around in, because people say, oh, you know what, you can park a Jimny next to let's say a Ferrari 458, for example, and the guy in the Ferrari will take a look at that Jimny standing next to him. So it is a bit of a special car as well. And it does have a bit of a waiting list, but it's worth the wait all the way.
I absolutely agree.
But I mean, a waiting list is great for a brand. I think any brand that can claim that they've got a model, for example, that's on a waiting list, I mean, that does wonders for the brand equity.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, even if there's a hypothetical 12-month waiting list, it's a lot of that is duplication in orders, etc. So you do find that contracts a little bit. So, but again, it's very good for a brand to have a waiting list.
Awesome. Listen, Pete, you had another question with regards to the workshops.
Yeah, Brendon, this is just hearsay, but and I know from my own experience with chatting to customers that Suzuki has this reputation of being very, very reliable. And one of the things that I've been told, and I don't know if it's true, and this is what I wanted to check with you, was that in fact Suzukis are so reliable that Suzuki South Africa almost has to subsidize their workshops to keep them in business. I know it might be a bridge too far, but I mean, surely it's not too far away in terms of the fact that Suzuki is so reliable that your workshops can't possibly be making money.
Well, that would be a great workshop to work in if I'm subsidized to do work that's not being done. But yes, and I think it stems from the fact that, I mean, Suzukis are extremely reliable. There's no doubt about it. We've never had any issues in terms of major recalls or just years down the line now. And I think people are always sometimes hesitant in the beginning to invest into a new brand. And now Suzuki has seen 12 years already. So we've got customers, repeat customers. Our car park is growing. And I think that's where probably some of the rumors could have started saying, you know what, it's a relatively new brand. We don't have any comebacks in terms of reliability issues. But our workshops are now overturning stock that has been in let's say, in use over the last 12 years. So maybe it stemmed from that, where our car park wasn't as big as it was back then, and people were saying, okay, because we don't really have a lot of feedback or a lot of comebacks to the workshop for warranty issues or things like that, that maybe those rumors started. But from my experience, we don't really subsidize any of our
Awesome.
workshops.
Well, thank you for clearing that up.
Listen, so let's move on to the next slide that we accidentally saw, and this is the latest addition to your product lineup, the Suzuki Espresso. And I think you can tell us a little bit about this launch that was planned, because this was another COVID casualty. You guys had a nice launch planned and then COVID happened. So let's talk about that quickly.
Yeah, well, briefly, as you can see on some of those pictures on the presentation, we had everything ready to go for the launch of a very important model in a new segment for us. And as you can see, everything was set up. We were in Cape Town. The team was in Cape Town. Everyone was ready to rock and roll with this event. And that very evening, after our dry runs, the president announced some restrictions on public gatherings. And because our next event with our dealers would have been more than 100 people, we had to cancel that. And the subsequent days were our media days. Yes. So we had to take the decision, are we either going to carry on with the media, even though they would have been under that 100, but we're more concerned about what that public perception might be if we gather a lot of people together. So we had to make the decision to either be the last brand, South African, or let's say the last vehicle manufacturer to have a launch, or we could be the first to have a new one. And that's where the decision was actually quite easy to say, okay, let's make this digital. We are here, the team and everyone's ready. Let's put some videos together and let's do a presentation on a live stream format and launch the vehicle in a new way. And to our benefit, it worked out really, really well, because I think with that PR value of being the first to do it, and also the fact that this vehicle was a very highly anticipated vehicle in the segment, it gathered a lot of let's say, attention. And I think it was a successful launch, even more so than we might have had having it on a face-to-face level.
I agree, and well done to you guys and the team that launched that vehicle on such short notice in such an innovative way. It was absolutely brilliant. I watched it myself, and we actually had one of those vehicles here at the studio, and the guys from Race Day actually test drove it and loved it, by the way. So congratulations.
No, cool. Thank you.
All right. I think it's time that we sort of liven up this the show with our Guess the Car game. So tonight I'm going to give you a clue. They've all got 4 wheels. Yeah. So how's about that? All right. So you guys know the rules. The rules are that if you recognize the vehicle, please shout out your name. And this is where the viewers at home can also please join in. I'm watching the comments here. So you guys, I've got Kevin Tyler, I've got Bram Divenage, Ivan Fantona, Andrew Adams, Guys, if you guys are watching the show, we're going to put a segment of a car on the screen, and you guys can comment in the comments below what you think it is. So, Brendon and Peter, are you guys ready to go? Here's your first slide.
Peter. That's the Swift Sport.
All right, let's see if you're correct. Well done. One
Well
to
done.
Peter. One to Peter. I must tell you that I'm a bit worried about this guy next to me. Brendon, let's get you sharp and ready for the next one. Are you guys ready for the next one? Here it comes.
Very good. Brendon,
Peter.
Oh, Brendon was first. What is that?
that is the Suzuki Ignis.
Ignis. Let's see if you're correct. Well done, Bree. That's absolutely the Ignis. That is an iconic headlight with that daytime running lights. It gave it away. Listen, well done, Brendon. One each.
Oh,
Are you-
exciting, eh?
Are you guys ready for the next one? Let's see what's happening here.
Brendon,
Brendon,
Oh, come on.
Peter was stumbling over his own
I was
name.
stuttering.
Brendon, what is that?
you know what? It's very easy, but because I love that vehicle so much,
Yes.
I have to take this point from Peter. I have to. It's
Yes.
definitely a Suzuki Hayabusa. No, I'm joking.
All right. What is that?
That's the Jimny.
That's the Jimny. That's the new Jimny that's doing so well in the market at the moment. Okay, so it's 2 to Brendon and 1 to Peter. All right. Are you guys ready? Yeah, and Brendon sitting with a little bit of a delay. So Peter here in studio has got a little bit of an advantage. So
I don't want to hear any excuses.
Yeah, I'm hearing the excuses. So are you guys ready for the next one? Brendon, are you ready? Here it
Yes.
comes.
Is that
Brendon?
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 Peter. I'm
I've
calling
got-
out his name.
I've got Brendon. What is it?
It's our new baby.
It's the new
It's
baby. The
it's the
Espresso. He's well done, Brew. That was a bit difficult. It was a bit difficult, but well done. Okay, so what is the score now?
I think it's 2-1. 3-1.
3-1.
3-1 to Brendon.
Oh my goodness, you are getting behind.
I'm cutting his
again.
mic feed off soon.
All right, are you guys ready for the next one? Let's see what's happening.
Okay. No, what is that? Come on, guys.
Brendon's giving you a gap.
Jeez. Is that not the Peter? Is that not the Vitara?
Pete, let's see if your guess is correct or not. Brendon, did I stump you, Bree?
No. I realized that that little fender garnish, and it's definitely the Vitara. So well done.
Okay, so Peter's got yet again a chance to tie this up. Am I correct, Fritz? There's one more to go. So Peter's got a chance to tie it up, or it's going to go to Brendon. But I've got a little bit of a surprise for you guys. Let's see if you can get the next one.
Peter.
Brendon.
Oh, Peter's gone first.
I
What
would
is-
say that's the original Jimny.
Okay, but it's not. It wasn't called the Jimny. So, Brendon, let's go to you, Brendon.
That's an SJ413.
Correct.
Oh, really? You're going to go down that road?
I have to be very, very strict with the rules, Pete.
Okay. Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
What, Brendon, was that called a Jimny?
Yes, it
Was
was,
it-
in
Boom!
Japan.
Was it called a Jimny?
It was actually called the Jimny originally.
Okay.
It was only when the export model that we know as our first generation in South Africa was
Yes.
exported to all other countries that it was known globally as Jimny.
I'm pretty sure
Okay,
I heard
so-
the word original and
So,
Jimny.
so what are we going to do, Brendon? I'm going to leave it up to you. He took a guess and said it was the original Jimny, and he was actually right. Are we going to give it to him and tie it up?
Yeah, let's do it. 100%.
Oh, what a sport.
All right. Listen, guys, you guys at home watching us on raceday.tv, on FS Media and FS Auto, please, if you guys have any comments, please drop them in the comments below and we'll get to your questions if you have anything. Brendon, thank you so much for joining us. It was absolutely awesome speaking to you. Congratulations on everything that you guys are achieving. I, by myself, and we spoke about this yesterday in our meeting, Suzuki is definitely one of the brands that I can recommend with, sleeping well at night. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
absolutely. I mean, we get asked a lot of questions from people, what car should I buy? And Suzuki is certainly one of those ones that we know if we suggest it, we don't hear from them again.
Perfect. Thank you, guys, and thank you for the support. And I mean, that's what really makes us tick, is to make sure we provide value to our customers, and through you guys also supporting us as a brand and putting the good word out there. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Thanks, Brendon. Thanks for joining us.
So that was Brendon Carpenter from Suzuki. Wow, what a great
nice
guest
guy,
to have on
eh?
the show.
What a nice guy. He's been there for 7 years. He's gone through the ranks.
Yep.
But he looks about 19.
I know, terrible.
All right, guys. So we had a new segment on the show last week called "How Things Work" or "How Does It Work" or whatever the case is. And you told us about turbos last week.
Yeah, so turbos was a specific turbo.
Yes.
So we might revisit turbos going
Yes.
down the line, but yeah, turbos.
And yesterday you completely stumped me again. And I've reverted to calling you Professor Peter Viljoen from now on, because I think you're the like Colin would say, the cleverer oak that I know.
Well, thank you.
So let's jump into this next segment, how things work. And tonight we're talking about, and touching on that fuel thing again,
Yeah.
how fuel is made and the difference between 93 and 94. Very interesting. Please stay tuned and watch the segment.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our next installment of How Things Work. And on this week's episode, we're going to be talking about the mystery of petrol, and in particular, we're going to look at the difference between 95 and 93 octane, and what influence those two octanes have on the performance of your engine, the fuel consumption, and perhaps some reliability issues that may come about if you're using the wrong octane in the wrong engine. So first of all, let's have a look at how fuel is made. And ironically, this is not too dissimilar to how we distill alcohol. So for those of you that make your own alcohol at home, you'll be comfortable with this process. But amazingly enough, we take a barrel of oil that we get from the ground, and that barrel of oil is filled with hundreds and hundreds of different types of hydrocarbons. We then take the oil, we put it through a furnace, and we heat it up. And as we heat it up, we break the bonds of those hydrocarbons, and we get a varying amount of different product out of it. Anything from gas through to our petrol or gasoline, kerosene, diesel, lubricating oil, right down to waxes. So the basic principle is that with our hydrocarbon chains that we have, the more carbon we have in these chains, the more energy it takes for us to break these chains and for the hydrocarbons to actually boil out. So we can see here the first one is methane, which only has one carbon atom in the chain. The second one is butane, which has two. The third one is propane, which has three. Now propane is the gas that you use on your braais. So you can see it takes more and more energy for us to boil these up in that reactor that we showed you in the first slide. Now we've worked through all the different chains of hydrocarbons until we get to one that is called heptane. Now heptane stands for 7, and as you'll see here, there are 7 carbon atoms in this chain that we've got to break before it boils out. The third one is one that is called octane, and it's octane because octane means 8, and we will then have 8 carbon atoms in the chain. So going back to our first slide that we showed you in terms of how we distill the crude oil, and with our new understanding of how the carbon atoms actually work in terms of the chains, we can see that the ones that have the least amount of carbon atoms in the chain are the ones that evaporate first, and those are our gases. And we work our way down until we get to things like our petrol or gasoline, kerosene, diesel, our lubricating oils, waxes, and the like. So what is the actual difference between 93 and 95 octane, and how do they produce it? Well, once we've boiled out the heptane and the octane, all we do is we blend the two together. So 93 octane is in fact 93% octane and 7% heptane blended together, and 95 octane is logically 95% octane plus a 5% blend of heptane. So what is the implication of 93 and 95 in our engines? Well, I want to give you a little bit of a lesson in science from Pascal, who you all recognize his name. And one of his laws tells us that for a closed container, the higher the temperature, the higher the pressure in the container. And the inverse is true. The higher the pressure in the container, the higher the temperature. So how does that relate now to our engines? So in the main, we have two types of engines. We have a high pressure engine and a low pressure engine. You might have read about a compression ratio when you've looked at the specs on an engine. And what the compression ratio tells us is the difference in volume that the piston scribes through versus the volume that's left over between the top of the piston and the start of the head. That's our compression ratio. So a little rule of thumb that I've got is that if your compression ratio on your engine is less than 10:1, chances are you've got a low pressure engine. And an example of that would be typically found in our old 8-valve motors. If it's larger than 10:1, we're going to have a high pressure engine, and examples of those are our 16-valve motors. And in fact, these days with direct injection engines, we're sitting at compression ratios of about 12:1. So we've learnt already that it takes more energy to create octane than it does to create heptane. So the logic is that it takes more energy and more temperature to burn octane versus heptane. And herein lies the challenge. If you've got a low pressure engine and you put 95 fuel into your low pressure engine, it's not going to get to enough of a temperature or pressure scenario to burn all your 95 fuel. So you're wasting good money after bad. You're absolutely not going to get any more performance out of it. In fact, 93 and 95 octane have the same calorific value. In other words, the same amount of energy per kilogram. So it's not like you get this additional burst of power out of the fuel. It's all about at what temperature the fuel combusts at. And the same is true, and this is very, very important for us as consumers. One thing you'll notice is that 93 fuel is cheaper than 95. So obviously it's very tempting for us in these economic times, and we've just now had an announcement of a massive fuel price increase. It's very tempting for us to go, well, hang on a second, I think I'm going to rather fill up my vehicle with 93 octane because it's cheaper. But the problem with that is that we now have a high pressure engine, which means we're creating higher temperatures and pressures. And that means that the 93 octane fuel is literally going to combust before the piston reaches its top dead center position. And what that causes is pre-detonation. And pre-detonation is devastating for an engine. That's the first point. So we're going to introduce reliability issues. But the second most important point is that pre-detonation simply causes our engine management system to start retarding the timing to cope with all this pre-detonation. So now we're going to get even worse fuel consumption, worse efficiency out of our engine, and ultimately, at the end of the day, we're not going to see any economic advantage by putting 93 fuel into a high pressure engine. In fact, the reverse is true. It's probably going to cost us more in maintenance. So that's it. That's the difference between 93 and 95 octane, and we've seen a little bit on how we produce fuel in the first place. And I think the key message here is that don't be tempted to put the wrong fuels into your engine. Make sure that the fuel matches what the manufacturer has specified. They've specified that for a reason, and it's only going to end in tears with further damage or worse fuel consumption. But thanks for watching this episode, and make sure to look out for future episodes on how things work.
Geez, Professor Viljoen.
You're going to start a rumor with this, eh?
Holy but now I understand the shirt.
Yeah.
You're a bit of a rocket scientist. Listen, that was very interesting, man. And like I said to you yesterday, you told me stuff yesterday that I never even thought about. Like I really, it was an eye-opener, absolutely. So thank you very much for sharing the knowledge.
That's a pleasure.
So the fact that the guys put in different fuels, either to save money or to give themselves more performance and that sort of stuff, you touched on it and explained it, but I've got a question.
Yep.
Because, we in that racing fraternity, and I've seen oaks put racing fuel in their car. So does that now not work, or does it work?
Well, let me qualify that for you. So if we look at modern engines now that come out, and especially our high-performance motors, they were actually designed around 98 RON fuel.
Okay.
So chucking in race fuel by itself is not necessarily going to increase performance, but what it does is that the blend, if they blend it correctly, so in other words, if they take, let's say, half a tank of 95 octane and half a tank of the race fuel, which is about 102, you're going to get pretty close to a 98 octane, and therefore your engine's going to be running at the optimal design specifications. Yeah?
So again, if it's mixed correctly, then there will be an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, if they just put in 102 without increasing the compression ratio on the
Correct.
engine, they're wasting their money.
I hear you. Okay, another lesson learned. And then the last thing that I want to talk to you about or ask you is, we spoke about the pricing on the fuel in the news, and again explaining the difference between 95 and 93 and that sort of stuff. But recently, in the last couple of weeks, there was a huge decrease in the price of Brent crude oil.
Yep.
So why is the price on the oil going down, but the fuel price is going up? Where's the correlation?
So I think, first of all, the Brent crude oil itself, the actual tangible asset, the barrels of oil,
Yes.
didn't really drop as dramatically as the futures on oil. So the futures on oil is what the market will predict oil prices to be, and people will trade on that. And that actually dropped below the $0 mark. But the actual the oil itself, the barrel of oil, didn't go down to those kind of levels. So we haven't seen that translate through to the kind of fuel price decreases that you perhaps would have expected.
Okay, so is there a delay? So that was a month ago. Should we see something coming in the future because of that delay, or?
No, I think the market's corrected itself pretty quickly, and that's the thing about futures, is that it's an instantaneous transaction. It can correct itself pretty quickly, whereas the actual supply of the actual product itself, the tangible product, that will be far more accurate in predicting what the future fuel price is going to be.
I see a comment come through here that says, can you please, Professor Peter wears white lab coat for next week's episode? I'm sure we can make a plan.
Absolutely, why not?
Thank you very much for joining us for episode 12 of Let's Talk Automotive. Peter Viljoen and our guest, Brendon Carpenter from Suzuki Auto South Africa. What an awesome guy and awesome brand. Thank you very much, Pete. Any final words from you?
Well, just looking forward to the Baker's Dozen next week, episode 13, and just again to everybody, we're going through difficult times again with the increase in the virus infections that we're seeing. So everybody keep safe, keep warm, and keep healthy.
Absolutely. See you guys back here next week, same time, same place for episode 13. Let's Talk Automotive. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.